Welcome to September's Brewing Tips video. A lot of you contact us asking us questions about Gongfu tea. So we thought that over the next 6 months, anytime we send a global tea hut tea that is more conducive to Gongfu tea brewing, we're gonna go a little bit deeper into Gongfu tea. We're gonna cover things like history, brewing methods, and this month we're gonna start with the teaware itself, what you need to prepare Gongfu tea. Now, traditionally, there are 4 treasures of Gongfu tea. They are the 4 essentials in brewing Gongfu tea. These are what you really need to brew Gongfu tea. Number 1, of course, is the Yixing pot, right? When you come to the town of Yixing, there's a sign above the road that says, there's only one ceramic teapot in the world and her name is Yixing. For 500 years, zhisha clay, purple sand clay, has been married to tea. They have an incredibly rich and deep connection to each other. The effects of zhisha clay on tea are incredibly powerful, and when you come here to the center, we can do experiments so you can verify that for yourself. One of the problems is that in the late 90s, the mines in Yixing were closed, so the real zhisha clay comes from Yellow Dragon Mountain, or you could translate as Blue-Green Dragon Mountain, Huanglongsan, Qinglongsan. These are the best places where zhisha clay is mined. Nowadays they are closed, and those other regions, the clay that's mined from there, may or may not have as powerful of a relationship to tea as other kinds of teaware. So in other words, a pot made from clay from Gongda may be equal or even lesser than a porcelain pot, for example, or other materials. But when you get traditional real purple clay, it has a real magic effect on tea, which you have to experience yourself, and that marriage goes back 500 years. This clay has a really magical effect on tea. Yixing is the first treasure of Gongfu tea, so if you can get yourself a real zhisha pot made from authentic zhisha clay, mined from Yellow Dragon Mountain or Blue-Green Dragon Mountain, it'll have a tremendous impact on your tea. A lot of people often read that you need 1 Yixing pot for every kind of tea, which may seem extravagant. That's not 100% true. You can use just 1 pot for all your teas. If you do that, you're gonna have to take the leaves out immediately afterwards, so don't leave the leaves in the pot ever, and you're gonna have to re-scour the pot like once every year, so you're not gonna be able to season it as you would if you had a pot for each kind of tea. But you can, if you can find just 1 really good zhisha pot and have that. That's the first treasure of Gongfu tea. It's a necessity. The second treasure of Gongfu tea is the chachuan, which translates as tea boat. That is the dish that the teapot sits in so that you can shower with water and it will collect the showered water. Traditionally, tea boats were other plates or dishes that were repurposed to become a tea boat, so they weren't usually specifically made as tea boats, though that did start to happen later on. In the beginning, tea lovers, Gongfu tea masters, would just reappropriate any dish or plate, especially antiques, to serve as their tea boat. One of the joys of a tea lover is, of course, repurposing things that have nothing to do with tea to tea. Use an old bucket as a jianshui, a wastewater container, or in this case, use an old plate or a dish as your chachuan, your tea boat. So I have here a Ming Dynasty porcelain plate with a chimera on it, a qingling that I like a lot, and I use this as a tea boat. So tea boats were often repurposed plates or dishes. You can find any special dish or plate that is meaningful to you. Of course, if it's made of really nice clay, if it's an antique porcelain, or if it's made from purple sand, you can also get purple sand tea boats. If you get a purple sand tea boat or a tea boat made from other materials, it will improve your tea. But even otherwise, you can find any old plate, anything that appeals to you, and use it as your tea boat to catch the water after you've showered the pot. That's the second treasure of Gongfu tea. It's a necessity, the tea boat. The third treasure of Gongfu tea is, of course, the porcelain cups. Traditionally, the best cups came from Jingdezhen, which is a place in China, and the porcelain cups, the porcelain there is world famous even today. There was other regions producing nice porcelain as well, but finding some really nice porcelain cups is the third treasure of Gongfu tea. People often ask if purple sand, if Yixing is so great for tea, why don't you also use Yixing cups? They do make them. Well, the reason is because I Ching is often very rough on the lips, so when the I Ching cup touches your lip, it can be a little too hot, it can be a little rough. Also because I Ching purple sand is dark in color, you can't appreciate the beautiful colors of the tea liquor. You want to look at the tea liquor. Just today, one of our guests was commenting how beautiful and golden the oolong was that we were drinking. So being able to look at the tea liquor and the feeling on your mouth, the smoothness, is why we use porcelain cups. For us, antique cups are always going to be better. If you're going to find modern cups, we recommend getting Taiwanese cups. The porcelain is not a natural substance, it's a paste, and there's as many recipes for it as there are potters working with porcelain. The main ingredient, kaolinite, is in all porcelain, but there's different other recipes, and some factories put in chemicals we don't know what's in their glaze as well, so they can potentially be harmful for your health. Some porcelain and the painting on the outside has lead, etc. So in Taiwan, the porcelain's safe, it's a little bit higher quality. You want to find a cup that is tulip shaped. This is tulip shape. Tulip shape is the best, so you want it to be kind of narrow and tall. That will preserve the aroma of the tea. So as you drink the tea and after you finish, also you can smell the cup and appreciate the beautiful aroma. So if the cup's too open, it will lose all its temperature and aroma. We want a tulip shaped, very fine porcelain cup. So porcelain cups, that's the third treasure of Gongfu tea. It's a necessity. The fourth treasure of Gongfu tea is what's called the Mulberry Creek stove. This is a Mulberry Creek stove. It's a kettle and a stove. This is a new one, but there are antique ones also. We have antique ones here. We just wanted to show you that they're still being produced today. This one's wood fired. It's beautiful. So you have here your charcoal stove for heating your water and your kettle for boiling the water. And this is made of has some volcanic ore in it, so it has a really nice effect on the water. We have some antique stoves here as well from that time. For us, there's not really that much difference. It is much more beautiful to have the antique stove, but the stove is just holding the charcoal. It isn't actually touching the water. This is the area of Gongfu tea brewing that we are the most loose about, in the sense that I feel like you can use, many different combinations of heat and kettle to produce fine Gongfu tea. You don't necessarily need a Mulberry Creek stove. That's not even really possible today unless you go search out antique ones, and they're going to be expensive, and then they're fragile because they're old and they might crack and get broken, and that becomes an expensive tool. You can get modern, beautiful made ones, but they are also pretty rare and difficult to find and a little bit expensive. Like this one's just gorgeous, but you might not be able to find it where you live. Don't worry. Use any kettle you have and any heat you have. This is the area of the tea where you can use whatever is convenient for you, but try to get a really nice kettle. If you go back and read our August 2015 issue, which was all about fire, we talk in there all about the different heat sources and different kinds of kettle and their effects on tea. That's really important. So you're going to want to get really as nice of a kettle as you can in your price range. If you can use charcoal and have a brazier and can use charcoal, that's absolutely wonderful. If you can't use charcoal, then you can use infrared or other gas or other heat sources can also be nice. You can read about that in the magazine. But we wanted to show you a traditional Mulberry Creek stove because it is technically the fourth treasure of Gongfu tea. So we could reinterpret this one in the modern age to mean a really good heat source and kettle. So these are the four treasures of Gongfu tea: an I Ching pot, a tea boat, some porcelain cups, and a Mulberry Creek stove, which we could reinterpret to mean any very nice heat source and nice kettle combination. These are the four treasures of Gongfu tea. These are the essentials. These are what you really need. Then there's a lot of peripheral teaware. Some of it can be really, really nice and helpful. Others are gimmicky and often meant just to sell you things that you don't really need. Always try to reduce. Keep your tea practice as simple as possible. Some of the peripheral teaware that we find incredibly useful would be coasters, little coasters like this, especially this one's made of real purple sand, zisa clay, can be really nice to keep your cups on. It improves the tea, and it also looks nice and prevents spills from being on your table. Another peripheral teaware that we like a lot is a tray for the cups. The tray, if you have a tray here, and you can put your cups on the tray. Ideally, that could be made of zisa as well, but it could be porcelain or other materials as well. If you have a small tea tray and you put your cups on it, then you can favor fluency over precision. Both precision and fluency are important in pouring. They both will impact the quality of the tea, but if the two are competing with each other, then fluency is more important to the quality of the tea than precision. So precision means not spilling. You want to get the tea in each cup perfectly. That's important. But fluency, also fluid movements, is also very important. And between the two, fluency is much more important and affects the quality of the tea much more. You can experiment with that yourself. And so in the beginning, before your precision reaches the level where you can keep the tea in each cup and also move fluently, you're going to want a tray because you're going to spill between the cups and the tray will catch that water for you. You could also spill it onto your cloth if you have a cloth, and that would be okay too. We made a bonus video a few months ago also, of course, about the zhenshui. The zhenshui, you could say, is a necessity for Gongfu tea. You have to have a place to put the wastewater from the tea boat that they pour over the pot and into the cups to warm them as well. You need a zhenshui, really. It is actually, you could say, the fifth treasure of Gongfu tea. Even though the original there was only 4 treasures and the zhenshui wasn't mentioned because the zhenshui is kind of like an unmentionable. The unmentionable servants are often the highest servants, especially in Taoism and Buddhism. In Buddhist monasteries, the lowest jobs, like cleaning the bathroom, is often given to the highest monks, ideally, because that you should approach that work also with the same heart as you would approach working in the flower bed or doing other more pleasant tasks. So the zhenshui is a dear friend of tea and absolutely necessary in Gongfu tea. You could say outside of the 4 treasures, there's only really one necessity, and that's a zhenshui. Again, you can use anything as a zhenshui. It doesn't impact the quality of the tea. It's just a wastewater container, so you can use anything that you want to collect the wastewater, any bowl, any plate, anything that you appreciate, a bucket, as I said, or anything you find or want to use. These are some of the peripheral teaware that we find to be useful. Perhaps another day we can make a video on some of the ones we don't find useful and why, but ultimately, keep your tea brewing as simple as possible. Reduce to just the necessities. You don't need to buy extraneous things. Extraneous things clutter your tea space. They clutter your tea practice. They clutter your heart. Keep your tea as simple as possible. You just need a good heat source and a good kettle, a very nice pot, a nice cha chuan, and a nice set of cups, and also, of course, the zhenshui, right, which is the 5th treasure, though it's an unmentionable treasure traditionally. These are the 5 things that we need to brew Gongfu tea. You want to find as high of quality of these things as you can. As you brew this month's Nostalgia Gongfu tea, you can remember the most important aspect of Gongfu tea brewing, or any kind of tea brewing, is the heart of the brewer, keeping your heart centered, keeping your heart clear. That's the most important thing. The best tea always is tea made with love. So make your tea with love. It's more important than what kind of teaware you have or what brewing method you follow.